Hi, this is Alicia with the FSW Writing Center. Welcome to the Grammar Corner. In today's video, we're going to cover how to avoid fragments in your writing. Let's start with a definition. A fragment is an incomplete sentence. It's a group of words that begins with a capital letter and ends with some kind of endmark, like a period or an exclamation point, but does not meet the requirements of a complete sentence. What are the requirements of a complete sentence? To be a sentence, a group of words must have a subject and a verb and express a complete thought. For example, if I say, Susan smiled, I have a subject, a person or object that I'm focused on, in this case, Susan, and I have a verb, the thing that my subject is doing, in this case, smiling, and I have a complete thought. This is only 2 words, but it's still a complete sentence. I can make the sentence a lot more complicated by adding other details and elements if I want to. For example, I might say, Susan smiled happily, or when her sister said hello, Susan smiled happily in return, or when her sister said hello, Susan smiled happily in return, to hide the fact that she had just been crying over a cute video about 2 penguins falling in love, or any number of other more complex things. But no matter what I add, at the core, this sentence is still resting on the subject, verb, and complete thought of Susan smiled. This type of word grouping can also be referred to as an independent clause, and we'll talk more about that later. For now, though, let's go back to fragments. So again, a fragment is a group of words that is trying to be a sentence but does not meet the requirements. As you might imagine, there are a lot of different ways a group of words can fail to meet those requirements. So in this video, we're going to cover 3 common types of fragments to give you practice spotting them. Let's start with what is often referred to as a lonely verb fragment. The name pretty much tells you what this is. The verb is missing its subject. For example, let's say I have these 2 groups of words. Violet, Klaus, and Sunny studied together every week and got an A in their class. Can you spot the lonely verb? It happens in that second group of words. We have a verb, got, but no subject. As with most fragments, there are a few ways we can fix this. One would be to remove the period and simply let the subject of the first group of words, Violet, Klaus, and Sunny, have 2 verbs, studied and got. We could also keep the period but add a subject for that second group of words. They got an A in the class. Next, we'll look at what's called a dependent clause fragment. Remember, we said earlier that the main building block of a sentence, that subject, verb, complete thought, can also be referred to as an independent clause. It makes sense totally on its own and it doesn't need help. A dependent clause, on the other hand, is a group of words that has a subject and a verb but does not make sense on its own. This is usually because it begins with a word or phrase that leaves the audience needing more information. Something like after, when, because, which, and other things along those lines. Let's look at an example. Although Wendy would definitely miss the friend she was leaving behind, she was still excited to be moving to a new city. We have 2 groups of words here, and the first one is a fragment. It can be tricky to spot because we have a subject, Wendy, and we have a verb, would miss, but thanks to the word although, we don't have a complete thought. We need more information. The best way to fix this kind of fragment is to take the dependent clause and attach it to whatever independent clause will make it make sense, right? So here, if we replace the period with a comma, we have, although Wendy would definitely miss the friend she was leaving behind, she was still excited to be moving to a new city. Now that the 2 word groups are together, both parts make sense and our sentence is complete. Finally, we're going to look at what's called a participle phrase fragment. To understand this, first we need to understand what we mean by participle. This is the form of a verb that ends in ing or ed, like laughing or laughed. These words can be part of a verb phrase, but they can also function as nouns or adjectives, which can make them tricky. participle phrase starts with a participle and includes other words to make the meaning clear, the entire phrase together then acts as a noun or adjective. For example, reading books is a participle phrase. I can say, reading books is fun and have it act as my subject. Or I can say, the girl reading books is having fun and have it act as an adjective describing my subject. A participle phrase fragment happens when a participle phrase is treated as a sentence on its own. When a word that's normally a verb is part of a participle phrase, it can't act as the verb for the sentence, which can lead to confusion. So let's look at an example. Alice almost fell, running as fast as she could to catch the rabbit. Here, the second group of words is the fragment. Running as fast as she could to catch the rabbit describes what Alice is doing, but it doesn't meet the sentence requirements of having a subject, verb, and complete thought. Again, there's a few ways to fix the issue. First, we can keep the participle phrase exactly as it is, but move it so it's up next to the noun it describes. Running as fast as she could to catch the rabbit, comma, Alice almost fell. We could also keep the phrase where it was, but add a word to create a dependent clause that connects to our main clause. Alice almost fell while running as fast as she could to catch the rabbit. Okay, those are 3 of the most common fragments you'll run into. Remember, though, that there are many ways for a sentence to be incomplete. If you know that you consistently struggle with fragments, you'll want to get in the habit of checking your sentences to make sure each one has a subject, a verb, and expresses a complete thought. Remember, you can always come into the Writing Center for help if you need it. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope we'll see you soon.